Welcome to Authentic Educators, a podcast by teachers for teachers about best lessons, favorite classroom moments, and strategies you can use today. Human beings are and have been hardwired to seek belonging. Every aspect of our complicated lives is made better when we feel like we are seen and heard. In this week's episode, we are joined by National University's Dr. Maggie Broderick to discuss how classrooms improve when teachers keep students' sense of belonging at the forefront of their minds. The conversation's highlights include the three of us grappling with the fact that this concept is, to a certain degree, intangible. Dr. Broderick shares a story about her oases of belonging and how a teacher's disposition sets an essential tone for learning in the classroom. Dave and I are thrilled to be joined by Dr. Broderick this episode to discuss how she believes that teachers can foster a sense of belonging in the classroom. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Broderick. Could you tell our audience a bit about yourself?
Sure. Thanks so much, Cody and Dave. It's great to be here. I really love, that idea, the authentic educator, right? And it's really telling to think about, your audience and embracing that. So I'm Dr. Maggie Broderick, and I am an academic program director at National University in the Sanford College of Education. My program that I'm the director for is the Master of Arts in Social Emotional Learning. I'm also a dissertation chair. So we also have a lot of doctoral students doing dissertations about social emotional learning and related topics. Do a lot of things with that. And then finally, another hat I wear is I am in charge of the director of the Advanced Research Center, where we help faculty, alumni, students, and staff when they're to present and publish scholarly work and collaborating with each other.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining with us. So when you and I talked on the phone before we recorded, there were a lot of different topics that were potentially up our alley, and we settled on this idea of belonging. What is it about belonging that you find so essential to effective teaching and effective education? And I guess as the conversation unfolds, some tips, suggestions, advice for how our audience can create that belonging for their students.
Sure. I mean, it's so important. I am also a parent myself. I have three kids. Two are adults and one is a freshman in high school. And, I think about this a lot, both as a parent and also as a teacher. And then when I kind of dive in and put on my researcher hat and I look at research literature on, social emotional learning and connecting research and practice to really inform our teaching practice. And that phrase comes up a lot, right? Whether it's me as a parent thinking in my head, like, what's good for my own kid, me as a
Hmm.
teacher, thinking about my own practice in the classroom, regardless of age I'm teaching, even adults. And then also, that literature, it comes up. I find myself writing that when I'm writing something, working with colleagues, we go, in a conversation, oh, yes, sense of belonging, super important. And then you see it cited, but how do you measure that? Right? Like you could
Yeah,
say, oh, test scores, I can measure those. You could say, oh, achievement gap, oh, I can measure that. Oh, absence, people not being in school and tardiness and things like that, all measurable. But it's really not super quantifiable. It's a feeling, right?
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like that's kind of similar to when, there are all these quantifiables that you can do to evaluate teaching, but then I feel like there's this element of good teaching when you see it. And when you go into a classroom, that you can just kind of get that sense of if that teacher is achieving what he or she intends to. And so I feel like obviously it's not the same thing, but like I feel like that belonging is an intangible thing. So with that perplexity in the air, uh, how can we think about it? What does it mean? When do you as a teacher know you're doing it right? How can you improve it? That's a million questions I just gave you.
Right.
So I obviously expect you to be able to answer all of them immediately. But if you could just kind of, from your experience and your expertise, dive into some of those um, experiences or moments uh, that you've witnessed or observed or know about.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly it. There are a lot of ways to kind of, circle around this issue and think about it. But it really, exactly like you said, it's that people remember how a teacher made them feel. And I can think back, I've been around a bit in high school back in the 80s. I can remember teachers that I had and how they made me feel. Did they make me feel anxious? Was I
Hmm.
worried if I were to have an issue, coming to them, would I feel very concerned and I don't want to talk to that person? Or would I feel like they're open and ready to talk to me? Did I feel like they knew me? Did I feel like they, kind of connected with me and they saw me, even though I was kind of a quiet kid? All those sorts of things. So when I actually talk to teachers, we often will look at this exact thing. It's that they don't necessarily remember a lot. Students don't necessarily remember a lot of what they learned, even many years later, but they will remember how you made them feel. And with that, like, it's that students sort of forming their identity. Especially I know you all sort of look at grades 6 through 12.
Hmm.
They're growing so fast in that time, kids. They're
Sure.
getting abstract reasoning, critical thinking, independence. And, if we see them and say, oh, I see you, I see that you're interested in this, and you actually meet them where they are, they feel it. If you show pride in them, like, oh, I see that you have done this thing, and maybe I'm going to make that an example to show, look at how well they did with this. They let you know that you actually see them, and it's a moving target, right? They might be this way today, and a few weeks from now, they've grown and they're this way today and you see it. I'm sure you all know. Yeah, it's a real
Yeah,
moving target.
yeah.
So you see it and you see that somebody sees you growing and sees what you're doing. It feels very motivating to know that that you are seen and that you're sort of understood, both as an individual and as a part of a group.
I mean, I know that I feel that way as an employee, right? And as a teacher and as a friend and as a husband, that idea of being seen, that idea of being heard. And so it makes perfect sense that from the student lens, viewing outward, that would be so important. And I heard you say something telling them how proud you are of them or the pride you feel in them. Is there's no pixie dust, right? That we're going to be able to sprinkle on and then just say, hey, listener, boom, you can make your students feel like they believe. But I also do feel like, or belong rather, I feel like there have to be some specific, I don't know, expressions, mannerisms, things that you can try your best as a teacher to keep in the front of your mind that will make it more natural for you to be that teacher that's looked back on 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now and remember that that teacher made the student feel positively.
Right.
Or am I misreading it, right? Are there no things that we can, is it just a natural thing to do? Like how can our audience members improve that facet of their practice?
That is a great question. And when you bring that up, I think of the term dispositions, right? So that's another thing that's really hard to measure is teacher dispositions. And a lot
Mm,
of people will say, oh, this is part of our way that we certify or credential a teacher. We're going to look at all these other things and they've taken these classes and also what's their disposition. And that is such a difficult thing to say, well, this is definitely it. You have to have these things. But one of the aspects, well, there's a couple. One of them goes with social emotional learning. Really, obviously, it ties in. But one of the specific aspects is being open to diversity and understanding that your disposition toward diversity is important as you think about different perspectives, right? So I did a book chapter a while back with my colleague Amy Lynn, and we looked at how social emotional learning and teacher dispositions go together. They really do. And then when you think about work on things like intersectionality, right, and culturally responsive teaching, if we are open as people to, oh, this person's a bit different, my student's a bit different, what is it? How can I connect with them, and how can I make them feel a sense of belonging? I think that's a thing we really need to think a lot more about, and it's not that I've got to practice this disposition every day, but it's more like I have to think this way. I have to be open-minded. I have to reflect on my own thinking. Is there something stopping me from thinking about this student in a way where I can give them a better sense of belonging like that?
it really strikes my memory of a conversation that Dave and I had earlier at the very beginning of our podcast. Something that I try to do in my classroom is dedicate time. It's not every day, right? Life happens and expectations happen, but to have just one-on-one conversations with students where it allows you to make that connection It allows you to get to know them not just as a grade in a grade book, but as that human being. And so, I'm not necessarily the expert here, right? You have the research and everything that you've had in your career, but I'd like to think that that would be something that could be done to help improve a sense of belonging.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll have to admit, like, it might not always work. Like, I have some students now and then where I'm like, we're not connecting. It's just not going super great. Maybe somebody else can come in and be that person for them, and it takes a village, right?
Mhm.
And
Hmm.
so, for example, I'm looking into with some colleagues about these sort of what we call a hidden oasis of care. For me, that was the band classroom. I played the
Hidden
flute.
oasis of care. I like
Yeah,
that.
hidden
Okay.
oasis, right? Yeah,
Okay, cool.
exactly. And so for me, the band teacher was somebody I felt good. I'm a musician. I could go right to my band director and feel like even though I'm feeling shy, I can talk to him. Mr. C was there for me. I might not feel so good about someone else. For someone else, that might be, I don't know, an art teacher, or maybe it's their gym teacher or coach or something like this. So understanding that you might not be that person for, 15 out of the 20 people in your class. Maybe you are, maybe you aren't.
Hmm.
Somebody else in the building is. Where
Hmm.
is their hidden oasis of care? So if they're having trouble, you're not quite connecting with them, maybe the art teacher is. Maybe talk to the art teacher. Maybe it's their coach. Maybe talk to their coach. And I think, we can't be everything for everyone, but maybe there's someone there for everyone.
How could I teach in a middle school where there's a team environment, so there's four of us that get together not every day, but every other day to talk. So I feel like having those conversations is a lot easier to have. Dave, you're at the high school, right, where it's just harder schedule wise to have that inner colleague connection. So, Maggie, to find these oases, I don't know if that's a plural noun or not, but to find these places of care, what are some things that teachers that are in the thick of it can do so that you can, better understand or connect with the students?
Yeah, it is a lot harder when they become sort of compartmentalized, especially in the high school level, like you said, and not naturally having that built-in time. I have a story from way back when it really formed my identity as a teacher. I was student teaching, and
Hmm.
there was a girl in the band, I was student teaching, band, and so she would come to band and just do an incredible job. And I'm like, look at her play that trumpet. She's a superstar. And that was my lens. I was seeing her through this lens. It was a long time ago. Then I
Hmm.
went to the teacher's lounge and I sat there, I was having my lunch, and everybody was saying about the same exact student. What an awful student. She's skipping class. She has bad grades.
Hmm.
She has a bad family. So this, and this. And I thought, my gosh, I'm seeing it completely different. If I had only thought about my lens and they'd only thought about their lens. And I didn't speak up. I was very young and I was student teaching, but I thought to myself, if they could only see her in the band room, right? If they could only see that. So I think it's that opportunity to find those moments. If you hear someone saying so and so is really struggling, I was like, oh boy, have you seen them in this? Wow, are
Hmm.
you aware of their artwork in the art show? Are you aware of what they did? And maybe find that way to open it up with colleagues. I think it builds trust, you know?
Right.
I find myself
Ray,
I'm
Dave
raising my
raised his
hand,
hand,
but
everybody.
I'm sitting here listening. So much of this resonates because I think I've been on both ends of that spectrum of what you've just explained, Maggie, in terms of seeing a kid shining that's not shining somewhere else, or seeing a kid floundering who's doing fine somewhere else. And I feel like from both reading like probably a mixture of self-improvement things and talking to lots of people and working on this kind of work, I found that curiosity is like a superpower in education. And because I think a lot of teachers get like offended if a kid cuts class, or which I can understand that, or if a kid misses a lot, or if they're not doing well and they don't seem to care.
Hmm.
And I find I myself probably in the past, and I've had to work on this to get better at, I always try to make sure that the tonality isn't one that is condemning or finger pointing.
Accusatory. Yeah.
Yeah, and I really don't think I've ever been significantly wired that way, but that doesn't mean that tonality has been perfect. And I know there's some folks who that's maybe their strength and some that where it's not, but I think something changes so much when you lead with concern and curiosity of like, hey, I noticed you didn't do well on that quiz. Like, what's going on? Or you were out. Anything fun happening? Or whatever the situation is. I mean, you don't ask that if you know there's something bad going on, but
Right.
Like I think sometimes kids are like shocked when they tell me they're going on a vacation, and I'm like, and I'll engage with them about where it is and talk about where they're going to go and have fun and wish them well
Do you
and
bust out my wife's a travel agent at that
yeah,
point?
Dave, I have said
Ah.
that at times, but I've literally had kids comment before like, oh, like Mr. or Mrs. So and so like kind of gave me a hard time about being away for a week. I'm like, it is what it is. You're gonna go have fun, like
Yeah.
Yeah.
that's a different
Yeah.
story, but. I don't know. I find that curiosity piece and helping or meeting kids where they're at, which is a phrase I feel like I use a lot, but it matters because they really are all in different places. The hat I wore 3 years ago was teaching predominantly gifted and like honor students. In the past 3 years, I've taught everybody, every grade, every level, and it's actually been I think a really positive shift in my career because it's made me a better teacher because I've had to work with such so many
Diverse.
more diverse students,
Right.
both grade wise, both socioeconomic wise,
Yeah.
ability wise, and it's I think made me recognize I guess what's really important and for many of them what's really important more than the grade, more than the class is being seen by an adult. And it's actually been really I don't know, moving at times to kind of lean into that with certain students. I feel like there's connections I've made in the past 3 years that are different than some that I made prior, where maybe I've really connected on like an intellectual or interest level with some kids when I taught the honors classes, but on a sort of mentor mentee or really just feeling like I'm helping a kid that needs it more. I don't know if that's the right
Yeah.
way to put it, but there's that piece there that matters. And for a lot of kids, school is where they get the most recognition, or it might be where they go to disappear. And I
Yeah.
like to help both kids, the ones that need the recognition or what have you. I don't know if I asked
Maggie,
any questions or
Yeah.
anything, but yeah.
Maggie,
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
your roles, I feel like you're telling us the stuff that you do, and I'm reminded of the Cat in the Hat because my kids are young, and I feel like you must be like one of the Cat in the Hats with the tons of different hats that you're wearing. One of them you said was
Yeah.
helping or guiding dissertations and doctoral research, correct? Was that was one of your hats?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Are there
Yeah.
any of those studies or that research that you've supported students with that has taken like a close look at belonging in the classroom and creating it, and any takeaways that you might be able to share with us?
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting. I always love talking with folks who are in PK through 12. And then when I think about the same sorts of issues we face, and then looking at that for an adult learner, right? And the sense of belonging absolutely is key for both. And Dave, what you said about being curious is key for both too. I mean, think about the things that kids face. It's a lot, like we said earlier. We're talking about all that growth that goes on and all the hormones and all this. But adults, I've had people dealing with the deaths of their parents, maybe a divorce, maybe some other type of really difficult situation.
Mm,
They're raising their own kids, they're military, they have a job and they're stressed. And if you just have that curiosity, like you said, Dave, like, oh, I see you weren't able to do any work for 3 weeks. Let's see what's going on. Oh yeah, this time of year you're doing testing at your school. Oh, I know what that's like, and you have a little connection with them. So really it is about that same thing is trying to have that approachability, and it is dispositions, just like we were saying earlier, right? Even
hmm
for somebody who's an adult, sometimes my students are older than me, right? But ask something, ask some questions, find a way to be curious, and then have that disposition of openness. Like, I want to understand whatever that thing might be. And then sometimes I can't solve it. I'm not always there to solve it. I might hear it and then say, do you know we have these resources?
hmm
In your environment, maybe you send the kids somewhere else in the building. For us, we have online resources. And I say, yeah, I can't help with this, but did you know we can send you this to this place where we can help with this issue you're going through. So it's really just being really tuned into what's available, listening to the person, no matter what age they are, and then realizing where you can help and maybe you need to find someone else to help.
I one of the things I do in the beginning of the year when I think most teachers probably have some form of survey that you fill out, and something that I added a few years ago, which I suspect kind of is right up the belonging tree, is there's a question that I ask them and I say, is there an adult in this building that you have a positive relationship with? And
Nice.
so that if I am having a difficult time connecting with the student, and sometimes the students don't have one, right? So I'm not gonna like don't just make up a name for the sake of it.
Right.
And I've actually done it where I'm having an issue with a certain student, and then I'll go to so and so and say, hey, Dave, um, I'm having an issue with Sarah. She mentioned in the beginning of the year that you were a confidant or somebody that she trusts, a trusted adult in the building. Can Is there anything that I could maybe do differently? And one, I feel like it makes my colleague feel better. Like, oh wow, that student picked me,
Yeah.
right, for that
Yeah.
question, which is humbling. But then secondly, it allows me to see them, maybe from the perspective of the band teacher or the art teacher or wherever.
That's
And
it.
so, when I think about this conversation, I love how, and Dave, I think you would agree to this, that it just connects and dovetails so well with so many of our other episodes. And this idea of fostering belonging isn't necessarily something that you can just run the playbook for, right? Like there are things that you can do, leading with curiosity, being open-minded, right? Those are specific things you can do. But it's almost just this like mind shift switch where, yeah, we want our students to be learning, right? We all do. But we also want our students to feel a sense of belonging as well.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
those two marry so tightly. Um, Maggie, thank you so much for your time. Before we draw an end, if there's anything that you would want to, pearls of wisdom or a specific moment or a story that you would want to share, if not, I've been really happy with the conversation.
Oh, thank you both so much. I just appreciate it, Cody and Dave. I have lots of stuff coming out, so people can find me on LinkedIn. If you're interested, I'll have more book chapters and things connecting some of these dots. And it's always new questions to ask and answer, but being curious about people and all these things is where it's at. So thank you both for having me today.
Thank you so much, Maggie, for joining us on Authentic Educators, a podcast for teachers by teachers about best lessons, favorite classroom moments, and strategies you can use today.